Welcome to Coffee, Culture, and the Capital with Sophia and Greg. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. There has been so much going on. If you follow us on Instagram, you would have seen that all last week, some of us on the team were in DC, some of us were at the state capitol testifying, then down in Southern California at an event with younger people. There's so much going on. We're in, I think we talk about this on the podcast, Greg. We'll tell people like, okay, legislative session's over, prepping things and all that. And we have hit the prime time. We are in the crazy season of the year. So there's so much happening, but we still want to keep you guys all up to date about what's going on at the state capitol, what is happening across California. But before we kick off, Greg, what coffee do you have for coffee culture in the Capitol?
I just have a regular cup with cream and Truvia. That's my sugar substitute.
And show us the mug.
Well, the mug says Grandpa Status Achieved. I think I showed this one before, but this is my granddaughter, Shiloh, and she was born back in November. So she's getting old now. She's eating food, mashed up mangoes, and other things. She loves sticking everything in her mouth. So they grow so fast.
There you go. And so if you are listening, whether you're watching or listening on a podcast platform, make sure you have your cup of coffee to get you through the episode. But Greg, last week at the state capitol, we saw once again another pro-abortion bill. And, some people might think like, what is going on with that at California? Haven't they already put in the state constitution that abortion is legal up to the moment of birth? Didn't after Roe v. Wade was overturned, didn't Governor Newsom sign over a dozen pro-abortion bills? Are there still pro-abortion bills happening? And yes, there are, unfortunately. These legislators continue to come up with new pro-abortion bills. And honestly, it's not even them. It's Planned Parenthood, different abortion activist groups that are pushing these ideas. But Greg, AB 1973 was heard last week in the Assembly Health Committee. What is AB 1973?
Well, it's a bill to increase the number of abortion providers in the state. I guess there's not enough doctors doing late-term abortions. They call it second and third trimester abortions. And so in order to get more abortionists out there doing these horrific abortions, they are lowering the standards so that nurse practitioners, midwives, other non-doctors can actually do second and third trimester abortions. And these are the most grotesque of the abortions where it's just awful. You're actually, these little children, some of them can survive outside the womb. And so they've devised various ways to kill them, pull them out piece by piece, or kill them in the womb and then take some drugs to expel the poor baby. So sadly, that's the bill that was up, and we testified against it had a great nurse with us, Mindy Hertzel. She's a registered nurse, and she works as the director of clinic operations at Sierra Pregnancy and Health Center, one of these great pregnancy centers, pro-life pregnancy centers we have here in the Sacramento area. And it was her first time, and she did fabulous. Just talking about how dangerous these procedures are for non-doctors, because it doesn't take much before something goes wrong, and you need a whole set of doctors to save these women. So, and we're going to show some of her testimony, and she was great.
Yeah, let's check that out.
We can hear you. Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Mindy Hertzel with Sierra Pregnancy and Health. I'm a registered nurse with a certification in inpatient obstetrics, and I'm here today to oppose AB 1973. This bill would allow mid-level providers who do not have formal surgical training to perform second and third trimester abortions, procedures that carry significant medical risk and require advanced clinical judgment and experience. I've spent my career caring for women, many in high-risk situations, and I've seen how quickly complications can arise, especially later in pregnancy. Second and third trimester abortions are not simple procedures. Risks include hemorrhage, infection, uterine perforation, cervical laceration, amniotic embolism, and more, all of which are life-threatening. When complications occur, they escalate quickly and require immediate, experienced interdisciplinary intervention. I'll never forget experiencing what it looks like to call a code on a patient experiencing an amniotic embolism. It took our entire unit of nurses, anesthesiologists, the hospital rapid response team, and multiple physicians experienced in labor and delivery to perform the C-section, stabilize her, and transport her to critical care. The response was immediate and extensive. Had she not been in a facility equipped with teams of people prepared to respond to such emergencies, I hate to think of what the outcome would have been. Expanding these abortion services into a setting less prepared than that would be catastrophic. That's why this bill is so concerning. It expands who can perform higher risk procedures by lowering standards. When something goes wrong, it's not theoretical. It's someone's daughter, someone's partner, someone's whole future. Access should never come at the expense of safety and should never be just one option. Vulnerable patients should not receive a lower standard of care. They deserve the highest level of medical expertise, not increased exposure to risk. Women deserve honesty, dignity, and safe medical care, especially when the stakes are this high. Expanding these procedures to less experienced providers moves us in the wrong direction. For these reasons, I respectfully urge you to oppose AB 1973. Thank you for your time.
One, that was so good. But two, the line that when I know you were there with her in the room, Greg, but like when I was watching online, to hear her say vulnerable patients do not deserve like a lower level of care, I was like, mic drop, walk out of the room. There you go. Because I don't think the legislators even realize like that is what they are doing here. When you start saying like, okay, we're going to have physician's assistants and nurses and midwives perform these abortions, that is a lower standard of care, because she's right. Things do go wrong in abortions. Like, whether or not you are pro-life like us and you know abortions are wrong for any reason, or you're one of those legislators that are sitting there and are pro-abortion and believe it's like this woman's choice, you should still be able to recognize that is a lower standard of care for these women. I mean, I was just looking up right now, Greg. They say there's 2,000 heart surgeries in the United States performed every single day. Okay, so now there's all these heart surgeries. Should we start lowering the standards and saying nurses and PAs and different people should be able to perform these heart surgeries so we can pump out as many as possible and get things done? And that's actually like heart surgeries are life-saving surgeries. And yet they're going to lower that standard for abortion because they continue to want abortions to increase and the numbers to go up. And it's really disturbing when you look at it. If you take your personal beliefs completely out of it and just look at the medical standards and what's going on here, it makes no sense. And yet the legislators are continuing to push things like this. So Greg, what were your thoughts when you heard her, when you were in that room?
Well, at first we were a little disappointed. This bill was like, 6, 7 down on the list. So we thought, okay, we got some time to wait. And we were talking outside the hearing room, Mindy and I, and all of a sudden I realized the hearing was starting on our bill. And so we ran in there, and it was so early that the only legislator sitting up there was the chair of the Assembly Health Committee. The chair is actually Mia Bonta. Mia Bonta is the wife of the Attorney General. She, if you look at our scorecards every year we put out, last year she got the worst grade. And so she is uber pro-abortion, talks about her own abortions, with pride. And so I thought, well, who's going to see this? The legislators aren't even going to hear it, right? I mean, they'll just come in later. This is what typically happens. They don't show up on time. They'll put the vote off till later in the committee hearing when everybody shows up. So I know we did good, but I was upset that more people didn't hear it. But one of the things we do at the California Family Council is we take those videos, the testimony, we put that online, and then we also write stories, and we turn those stories into press releases. So that's what I did. I put a story together about this particular hearing, highlighted what I said, what Mindy said, and I sent it out as a press release to 500 reporters around the country. And guess who picked it up? The next morning, I had the New York Post, and they actually have a California Post version. They wanted to do a story on this. And so, it came out yesterday, a great story covering what we had said. And it's like, wow, that made it worth it, right? You think no one's listening. Now one of the biggest papers in the country is picking it up. And now the whole, what kind of publicity is that? So that's why we do these things. That's how we can take what happens in a committee hearing and just blow it up. And so our message gets out to the whole culture. And so that was encouraging to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's so important is, Greg, like you said, we write stories about it. You send out the press releases. We post these on social media. I mean, the bills we're watching, we will put the whole hearings up on our YouTube channel. But if you see these bills on social media or video clips of them or what the legislators are saying, please share it far and wide, because the legislators do not want the public to actually see what they're saying in these committees and see what they believe. Because when we tell you about these bills, people are like, wow, that bill is so extreme. You want to know what's more extreme than the bill itself? What these legislators say about it in the committee hearings. And they think people aren't watching or people aren't listening. And so they'll actually start to get quiet because we've shared so much of the extreme things they're saying. So when you guys see that, share that. The public really needs to know and see what these legislators are pushing, what they see, what they're saying, what they believe in. And so unfortunately, this did pass through the Assembly Health Committee hearing. It passed with 11 yes votes, 4 no votes, and 1 no vote received. And if you're sitting here and you're listening and you're thinking, this is making me really upset, I want to do something, I want to try to make a difference, I want to get involved, we have the way for you to do that. So we have call-in campaigns that we set up, and there's one for this bill for AB 1973. So if you go to the description of this podcast, whether you're on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're on, you will see a call-in campaign linked for AB 1973. You put in your information. We will provide to you your assembly member's office number. You don't have to go searching for it. It will be provided there, as well as we will give you talking points as why to urge your assembly member to vote no on AB 1973. We want to make it so simple, so easy, so understandable. It only takes a couple minutes by the time you plug in your information and by the time you hang up the phone when you're done with the conversation. It doesn't take that long, but your voice matters. The legislators need to hear from you. So right now, before you continue listening to the podcast, go do the call-in campaign and then come back to the podcast. But make those phone calls. They truly do make a difference. And like I said, we try to make it as easy as possible for you guys to get involved. And so this bill is going to be going to the Appropriations Committee next, which is where they kind of look at the financial angle and ends of things. And if it passes through there, it will hit the assembly floor. So every assembly member will be voting on it if it passes through appropriations, which we're expecting it to do so. So that's why you can start calling your assembly member now. But Greg, that was not the only bill from last week. There's been dozens and dozens of bills and running in and out of hearings and multiple people testifying on different things. But one of the other bills that had a very contentious hearing, and actually was a hearing where the Republicans were asking questions and speaking up and saying things, and it made it for a fun hearing to watch, actually, because you kind of watched the author of the bill scramble. But this is AB 1578, and Greg, you testified on this bill. You were there with Sonia Shaw, who is the president of the Chino Valley Unified School Board. And so I was in Washington, D.C. as this hearing was going on. I was watching clips of it. I was seeing the group message. Everything was going on. And I want you to dive more into it. But real briefly, the author of the bill wasn't there to even introduce the bill. And it almost, from someone watching from the outside, I don't know if you can explain it more how it felt in the room. You had such a powerful testimony. Sonia had such a powerful testimony. The legislators were asking questions. And Assemblymember Corey Jackson, who is the author of the bill, was in the room. He had another assembly member introduce the bill for him. And it was like out of nowhere, as the bill's kind of struggling and who he had come in to introduce the bill for him is getting hammered with questions. All of a sudden it was like, oh, here's Dr. Corey Jackson, and like had to come in to defend his bill. And you know what? Like, I don't know what the exact situation was and why that happened, but that's what it felt like. It's very rare that an assembly member is there and they're not there to introduce their own bill. And maybe he just thought like, this bill is going to pass through. There's going to be no issues. There's going to be no pushback. I don't know what it was, but I know I've talked all about it and everyone's probably wondering, what even is this bill you're talking about, Sophia? So Greg, give us the lay of the land for AB 1578.
Right. AB 1578. This is a bill that is going to purge from the world hate and bring love to everyone's heart. Because this bill mandates all local, state officials, elected officials have to go through yearly anti-hate training. Anti-hate training. So what is anti-hate training? Well, that is very good question, and that was the main question of the whole hearing because Corey Jackson didn't define it in his bill. Once the Republicans started asking, like, what is included in hate? And so I had some specific things I asked him in my speech because he had testified in a previous hearing about this bill and completely ignored the opposition witnesses, didn't define what hate was. And so I wanted to ask him specifically because we suspect we know what hate is in his mind because he has mentioned things that are hateful, right? Like parent notification policies are hateful attacks on trans kids, right? And he is actually part of a committee. He chairs a committee called the Committee on Hate, Racism, and Xenophobia, right? And I've seen some of these hearings he holds, and he never... I mean, I think 99% of us would agree on what hate is generally, but you know what happens is Christian beliefs on sexuality and gender, it get branded as hate. And so that is what I think they're really after, is to shut down Christian legislators voicing their opinion about not wanting boys and girls sports or bathrooms or showers, right? And they want that to be stopped, right? And one of the biggest, let's say, biggest outspoken local official they could probably imagine would be Sonia Shaw. And we had her there that day. And I think this is what I imagine happened. When they realized she was in the room, because the bill was supposed to be up first, and we kept waiting for an hour and a half. And finally, they call the bill, and we get up there, and somebody on the committee comes down and says, I'm going to introduce this for Mr. Jackson. He's not available, right? So he sits down, reads a script, right? But then the Republicans, I think they didn't realize Republicans were not going to sit there saying nothing. Like, sadly, sometimes that's what they do. They don't ask any questions, but they go, oh no. So we had Gallagher up there. We had Assemblywoman Davies. We had Macedo, and she asked some unbelievable questions. And so we're going to show you some of the testimony we gave and some of the questions that were asked. And Corey Jackson, and get this. So as these questions start answering, I look to my right and I see Corey Jackson open the door and kind of sheepishly looking a little embarrassed, come on in and say, hey, I'll answer your questions. It's almost like he realized the whole thing was collapsing and he ran down to rescue it. I mean, that's what of course we don't know, but that is what it appeared like. I've never seen that happen, where I've seen plenty of times legislators present for someone else. They're not available for whatever reason, but I've never seen one come in the middle of the hearing when they said they couldn't be there. So let's listen to some of the testimony and some of the great questions asked by the Republicans, and you'll get a flavor of what happened.
All right, let's tune into a part of your testimony, Greg.
Assemblymember Jackson, in the previous hearing, he declined to explain what he considered hate speech. So here's my plain questions about this bill. Is it hate speech to say a child cannot be born in the wrong body? That girls' sports should be reserved for those with female bodies? That schools shouldn't change a child's name without parental permission? What about a person who won't use someone's preferred pronouns, not out of hatred, but out of a sincere religious conviction that it's wrong to affirm something they believe to be untrue? Every member of this committee should be asking these same questions before voting on this bill. If you can't define what speech is, in this training, you're handing a blank check to outside advocacy organizations to decide for you, define the term, or withdraw the bill.
Thank you.
My name is Sonia Shaw. I'm the president of Chino Valley Unified School Board, and I strongly oppose AB 1578. I know what it looks like when the powerful try to silence people they disagree with. I have been sued by the Attorney General, the governor, and the state superintendent for supporting parental notification. I have been smeared by the governor. I have received death threats at my own home, all because I believe parents have a right to know what is happening with their own children. Now Sacramento wants every elected official to sit through mandatory anti-hate speech training. Every school board member, every city council member, every county supervisor. Here's the problem. The bill never defines what hate speech is, not once. So who decides? Look no further than the bill's own author. When Attorney General Bonta sued my district, Assemblymember Jackson went on social media and declared our parental notification policy had nothing to do with parents' rights and everything to do with Christian nationalism movement attacking minority groups. That's how he describes parents who simply want to know what is happening with their own child.
When you said define the term or withdraw the bill, I was like, again, mic drop. Like, you can walk out of the room after that, because the fact that we've hit a point where these legislators think that they can introduce bills and get people to vote on their bills and get these bills to be passing through committee after committee when they're not even defining what the bill is going to do. Like, they're not defining what hate speech even is. And then Sonia just came in and was a powerhouse too, and did such a great job explaining the hate she has received firsthand, different things like that. And I mean, yeah, how do we expect, I'm just sitting here trying to process, how do we expect these legislators to, or someone like Assemblymember Corey Jackson, to determine what is hate speech and what is not? And Macedo gets into that, so we'll talk about this in a second. But I'm sitting here and I've like told friends before, I'm like, yeah, I've been called a Nazi, a bigot, a homophobe, a transphobe, hateful, uncollaborative, causing harm, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, by like random fake people on Instagram or social media. And I'm like, no, by sitting assembly members and state senators. So those are the people we now want to define what like hate speech is and give them like training. It's just so ironic. And like, in reality, what they're obviously going to try to do is make it so like the things that we're saying that, and Greg, you brought this up in your testimony, you don't belong in women's sports, you can't change your sex, like all these different things that are Christian values, that are common sense values, that's what they claim is hateful. But calling us Nazis for saying these things, that's not hateful. So that's my 2 cents on that, Greg.
No, you're right. And later in this hearing, you guys should watch the whole hearing, it's fascinating. He says, well, we're gonna announce the definition before the bill is voted on the floor, right? They're gonna I think they have 72 hours to amend the bill before it's voted on. And some of the Republicans said, well, why can't you show it now? Why would you have a bill before us when you can't define the terms? I mean, how it's defined will determine how people vote on this. But no, they know that there is no legal definition of hate speech that's going to survive the First Amendment protections that people have, right? You put government in charge deciding what hate is, they're simply going to outlaw speech that makes them look bad, right? Makes them feel bad. Listen, that's been happening for thousands of years. That's why we had the First Amendment in the first place. Because it was always, the government, when it starts regulating speech, it always regulates it in favor of themselves, in favor of the people in power, right? So, nothing has changed. So this is I can't believe they keep trying to do this. But I'm so glad the Republicans spoke up. And we're going to show you a clip from one of the Republicans. And she was so nice the way she asked this. He did not know what was coming. But listen to the question. And this is actually, she was bringing up an instance that happened when you, Sophia, were testifying for a bill that protected girls' sports. And it just said, hey, girls' sport should be for girls. That's what the bill was for. It was introduced by Assemblywoman Sanchez. And then on the dais, one of the legislators accused you guys of something, and she brings that up and asked, listen, when she asked it, oh my goodness, it was like a bomb went off. So, watch.
Yes. So let's check it out. But I do want to put a preface for those of you that are just listening to the audio and you don't see the clips playing because you're just tuned in on like a podcast streaming platform. When it goes silent for a second, I promise you the podcast didn't cut out. There's nothing wrong with your audio. That is just the author of the bill looking around, having no idea how to answer this question. So don't think, what's going on? Did it pause? Why is my audio cutting? That's just crickets from the assembly member not knowing what to say. You're going to also hear, we clip together when Assemblywoman Macedo, the question she asks, we actually clip together from the old hearing. And so you guys will hear firsthand yourself what was actually said in that committee hearing. So with that, let's tune into it.
An instance last year that really stuck with me, and it was actually during a very contentious committee hearing.
Yeah.
That one of our colleagues compared the words of people that believed boys did not belong in girls' sports to that of Nazi Germany. Would that fall under this?
If without knowing the particular saying,
this is really reminiscent to me of what happened in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. We are moving towards we are moving towards autocracy in this country. In Nazi Germany, transgender people were persecuted,
Point of order.
barred from public life.
Mr. Gonzalez.
I appreciate my colleagues' comments, but if we could stick to the point.
This is about this. This is about this bill. They
Thank
were
you, Mr.
barred
Zuber.
from public life. They were detransitioned. They
Also about
imprisoned
Nazi
and
Germany.
killed in concentration camps. And the way that it started was the same kinds of things that are happening in this country. But
if you're saying that all they said was that
They were comparing, I can give you further clarification.
that trans individuals do not belong in girls' sports, is that categorized as hate speech? That does not fall into that category.
No, not the statement by so the author of the bill and the intent of the bill was to honor Title IX and that boys were not allowed in girls' sports, trans athletes and things like that. One of the members of the committee then responded to that, making comparisons to basically making an assumption that this was Nazi kind of behavior. Would that fall under this? And that's where I'm not. This
I tend to, without hearing it myself, I will tend to say there's a high bar to say it's hate speech, right? It's a high bar, meaning that, are they saying that a particular group should not be? It's hard to say. I mean, but so I can't really answer you specifically your question because I want to answer it honestly. You know me. I'll try to share
the clip with you and we can have a conversation another time. But in general, that's where I think the point of this is I think there's a lot of work to be done on what specifically we want to target with this before we move too far forward.
Okay, do you realize that she trapped him? Because what is one of the worst things you could say to someone? What's the most hateful thing you could say? To compare someone to a Nazi, right? To compare someone to a mass murderer who put people just because of their ethnic and religious background in ovens, right? And that is what the legislature, or Mr. Sabur, Assemblyman Sabur, was calling another legislator, that her bill was similar to what a Nazi would do. And he could not say that would be hateful. It would not be hateful for an elected official to refer to another elected official's behavior as being like a Nazi, right? And he couldn't say, if he said, yeah, that's hateful, then he would just throw his colleague under the bus, right? And so what are you doing? What in the world? It was, he paused, he knew he was trapped. So it was just, oh my gosh. I thought I heard somebody snort in their microphone in the middle of that. I don't know who that was.
So it was so good. And like you said, he was caught. Like, okay, if I say this is hateful, I'm now saying my colleagues on the same side of the aisle as me are hateful. But like you said, and like when you're watching that committee hearing, the one where Zabur decided to call Nazis, it zooms out and it's myself and Kate Sanchez sitting there because we had just testified on this bill. I was the one who testified in support. And I remember sitting there and being like, all right, I just testified for 2 minutes and I talked about why we should be protecting girls' sports and how great and beneficial sports are for girls and boys don't belong in them. And then he decided to let us know that what he heard that day was equivalent to the murder of 6 million Jews. Make that make sense. Also, like, that puts people in harm's way. Because when you start to compare people to Nazis and Hitler and things like that, and you call them those names, people then think, oh, I'm going to go take out that person and I'm doing a good thing because that person's like Hitler. That person's a Nazi. And so the fact that he was like genuinely stumped, because again, like he knows that's a hateful thing to say. And we're not even saying that legislators need to be told what are hateful things to say. Like, we're saying that this bill itself, like, needs to be opposed. There's no definitions to it. We have the freedom of speech, all of those different things. But the fact that he's like, I don't know if that's going to be hate speech, as he's the one pushing through the hate speech bill. You should know exactly what's going to say. And Assemblymember Gallagher got him good too. And like the fact that like Macedo had to say though, like, this isn't a gotcha question. Because it's not. This is just a genuine question. Like, where are we going with this? Because they, during the committee hearing, try to tell Assemblymember Gallagher, like, these are gotcha questions. And it's like, no, these are just legitimate questions. How are they supposed to vote on a bill that's not defined, that doesn't have the training there? That, like, it's just so insane that that's how the Democrats are expecting them to work. And I just want to clarify again, CFC is a nonpartisan organization. We are not a Democrat or Republican organization. We are standing for biblical values. But we are watching in this committee hearing, we watch in committee hearings how the Capitol works. And genuinely, we see that unfortunately, most things are either passed or killed or on a party line vote. And so when we're saying the Democrats are doing this, we're not saying Democrat Party as a whole. It's these legislators and how they're working up there. So just want to clarify that. It was honestly, it is such a, like Greg, you put it perfectly, a fascinating hearing to watch. So go take 30 minutes and watch the hearing. It is so good. It will be linked below in the show notes. Greg, do you have any other thoughts on that bill or the hearing?
No, I just, folks, this is what your legislators are doing. They are seeking to shape culture by making everyone take training, like all elected officials. There's another bill out, AB 1803, which requires every employer to do anti-hate training. Right. And they define it a little more. You can't vilify anyone. You can't humiliate anyone. You can't make someone more or less feel bad. But a lot of times that puts the onerous of what is humiliating. And we have many times heard that the gospel itself humiliates. Right. It tells people that they're sinners in need of a savior. And there are a lot of folks out there who don't think they need a savior. They don't think anything's wrong with them. And they find that kind of message very insulting, right? And, you know, it kind of has been insulting ever since the beginning, especially for people who don't think they're sinners and don't need a savior. So when you put the government in charge of deciding what hate is, and all these government officials, you know, are very hostile towards the Christian message of repentance and forgiveness, you know, this is really a bill that could be targeted towards people of faith. And we know it will be targeted because we see it happening in other countries. In Finland, even a legislator there got charged with a hate crime for quoting Romans 1 about homosexuality. We see it happening in Canada. Canada's got a bill up. It's called C9. It's already passed through one house of the legislature, just outlawing hate speech, and there's no religious exemption, right? And so if the LGBT folks, those who are identifying as LGBT, they are pushing for this bill. They want to change culture. They've given up trying to persuade us that they're right, and now they want to use the government to punish those who disagree with their point of view. And folks, it's time to stand up, speak up, not be afraid. And if enough of us do it, this is going nowhere. Thankfully, we live in a country where our Constitution protects us. We have a First Amendment that protects freedom of speech and freedom of religion. But if nobody stands up for it, we're going to lose it. And, you know, we can't wait for 4 years before any case kind of gets up to the Supreme Court. Everybody's got to stand up now.
Absolutely. And if you're wondering how you can take action on this bill, because it did pass through the committee, it's heading to appropriations, which again, that's the financial end. So we assume it's going to pass through that and hit the assembly floor for everyone to vote on. We also have a call-in campaign for this bill with talking points, urging your assembly member to say no, giving you your assembly member's phone number, and everything. We break it down as easy as possible. So that is in the show notes. Click on that call-in campaign and urge your assembly member to vote no on AB 1578. And depending on when you're watching this, we want to invite you to the National Day of Prayer. We are hosting a National Day of Prayer event at the California State Capitol. That's going to be Thursday, May 7th at 11 a.m. We will be on the west steps of the state capitol. So if you're watching this right when it comes out or a couple days after it comes out, there's your invite. You can head to californiafamily.org, and there is an event page for the National Day of Prayer where you can RSVP. So we have that in the show notes as well. So you can RSVP and get all the information about the event, because I think after everything you heard at on the podcast today, you can probably agree with us. We need to be gathering together and praying for our state and praying for our legislators and our local officials and everything like that. So join us for an hour, 11 a.m., May 7th, to be praying. Jonathan Keller, the president of California Family Council, and myself, we actually just got back recently from Washington, D.C. for America Reads the Bible. It was a week long of the entire Bible being read out loud in Washington, D.C. at the Museum of the Bible. There was governors there. There was congressmen there. Franklin Graham was there. We saw Speaker Mike Johnson was there. The president, he spoke. So all these people, different people, read the Bible, pastors and faith leaders across the country. Myself and Jonathan had the opportunity to read the Bible as well. And so that was a great event, and just an encouraging event for you guys to all know that there are Christians and people that are still standing up and trying to just go back to scripture and go back to praying, go back to truth. So if you want to watch Jonathan and myself reading at that event to kind of see what it looks like, again, that link is also in the show notes. So there's plenty of links for you guys to check out, to tune into and see all the different things. And then to make sure you get all of this information every week, head to californiafamily.org and sign up to receive our newsletter. Once a week, every Monday, you'll receive an email from us that gives you the lay of the land. We link all of the different call-in campaigns, what is going on, what bill hearings, the podcast episodes, so many different things in one email. So make sure you sign up for that. The link to sign up will also be in the show notes. So go through the show notes, find all the links, and then make sure once you're done listening to this podcast to share it with a friend or a family member or a neighbor, and make sure people know the truth about what is happening in California. But with that, we will see you all next time.